Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I have one of my new dear friends with me tonight. Her name is Dr. Theresa Fulton-Tanksley. Excuse me. Theresa and I kind of got on a little bit of a discussion about GMOs and stuff, and so we are going to be discussing that as Theresa has she's the co-owner and director of Computational Plant Genomics, which is about crop improvement. She holds the following degrees: a BS in Microbiology and Genetics, a Master's of Science in Plant Breeding and Genetics, and a PhD in Science Education. And I figured that tonight would be a perfect opportunity to bring her on, as we all tend to have questions about the GMOs and everything that are going on. And she's going to explain to us tonight that some of it's good, and then some of it obviously isn't as favorable. And those are the things I think that most people focus on, Theresa. So, welcome to the show.
Hi. So we bonded over cats, and that's why we're new friends.
We did. We bonded. Both of us like taking care of feral cats, and we rescue them, try to find them homes, or at least let them, at least live comfortably and happy
Be
in
fed.
their own
Yeah.
environment. So yeah, definitely. And be fed, yes, be fed. And I'm grateful for you. So for caring for cats and stuff like that, because there's just so many that people leave behind and they don't get fixed. And I mean, it's just, they didn't ask for that,
Right. It's sad.
so definitely. Your daughter's in the chat room. She says, "Go, mom, go."
Oh, God. Great.
And if you want to see the chat room in the comments to the right of your screen at the top,
Oh, I see
you'll
it.
see where it says
Yep.
comments. If you click on that, and you'll be
Great.
able,
Yep.
there you go.
She's a very supportive daughter.
So welcome to the show. A couple of
Okay.
things. Oh, I believe that. It's always great to have your children be supportive of what you do, right? I mean, that's kind of important, because we set the role model, and when we make them happy with what we're doing, then obviously, it makes us feel good and makes us want to continue. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about tonight, and your number one passion right now. So when COVID hit, and food became a little bit scarce and people were hurting for money, Tompkins County got together and formed Mutual Aid Tompkins. And the nice thing about this is they're blue cabinets that are set up throughout the community in Tompkins County, and they get filled, what, twice a week, Teresa?
It's totally random.
Is it like
Totally volunteers when they
random?
can. Mhm.
So a lot of people in our county have benefited from Teresa and all of the other volunteers, and it's been amazing. God, the mosquitoes are up tonight. And it's been amazing because they've really helped a lot of families out by filling these cabinets, and it's anything from food and personal hygiene stuff, food for your
Toilet paper.
animals. I mean, it's been really a good thing. And then they have toilet paper. Yes, when toilet paper was scarce, it was toilet paper. The problem we have is sometimes one family will see it get filled and they'll like quickly go and like pretty much almost empty the cabinets anymore. It's gotten to that point. But when everybody has an opportunity to get a little something out of it, it makes it nice. It really does. And recently you've won one or two awards for this. You've been
One very
recognized.
recently
How many,
and one
Teresa?
last year, yeah. I think 2 so far, yeah. Yeah, one last week from the
Two.
Family and
So
Children's
why don't you talk?
Services, yeah. Hmm?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's just awesome. Tell us a little bit about it.
About the cabinets?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So they started,
Does
someone
somebody
had an
make
idea.
them? Does somebody make them?
It was all volunteer. Someone had the idea. If you've seen those little book libraries around, Phoebe Brown had the idea of, why don't we do this for food? And they got together and they got people to build them by volunteer. They got people to pitch in for the material cost, and that was pre me. I didn't come in at the very beginning. And it started with one at Phoebe Brown's house, and now there's like over 60, and they're, I think, pretty successful. With the problems like what you said, of course. But I think it's been a great resource, and even though COVID is sort of over, um, benefits have been cut, and I think it's still a very important resource. Might have lost you.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
I can see you. Nope, nope, you're here.
Okay, yep, you're back. You froze for a
See,
minute.
when benefits were cut,
We realized that the cabinets were still, it's not just COVID that made them important, it's just an ongoing food insecurity problem.
it's
And like you
definitely a
said,
good thing. I
not
know
just
when my daughter gets off the bus every day, that's the first thing she does. My daughter ends up going to the cabinet every day, and she ends up checking it. That's one of her highlights, is to go check it. But just so everybody knows, like, I hadn't started my computer in a week, and I started it up tonight, 10 minutes before the show. Big mistake, should have done it earlier. And my computer decided to do an update. So if we are broken up or choppy or anything like that, then please forgive me, because it finished the update, but now it wants me to install Windows 11 for free. And I
Oh
don't want to
no.
install Windows 11. So now it's going to take my computer, until I do something about it. But so if it doesn't, if this comes out too choppy or anything like that, I will re-record this with Theresa, so that everybody,
Okay.
we have a better video.
Mhm.
So definitely with these. Now, how does this work with filling the cabinets? Who supplies the food? Who are there grants? Is there special funding, or is this the volunteers doing it?
It's almost all volunteers. We get a little bit of donations from Wegmans and Green Star and Walmart. Um, a few donations from them every week, but the vast majority of it is just volunteers. A little bit comes from the food bank, but the majority is just volunteers. For example, my husband and I, we used to give money to like the food banks or other charities, and we just said, you know what, this is going directly to people. Let's divert any money that we used to give them to charities and things, and put it right to here, because this is going directly to our community, no middle person. So yeah, it's just volunteers, and there is a host for every cabinet, and they are supposed to just make sure it doesn't need repairs. And if the hinge is broken, they should tell me. I have people helping. A colleague and my husband help repair things. I repaint a lot of them myself. So it's, I would say 90 something percent is just volunteers shopping. We look for bargains, toilet paper, got buy one, get one free, things like that.
That's awesome. And I don't think people realize that this isn't funded, that this is actually coming out of, people's pockets that are being, compassionate and generous and caring for their community. And to me, I think it's amazing. And I love all of you for this, because it really shows, that you care for all. There's no judgment. There's nothing. You really want to help people and bring people together, and that's what it's all about. That's what we're all about, right? Is
And it is part of a bigger umbrella that's mutual
people
aid, which started, which also does other things, like has the Facebook
wanting to
page
just
where people, whoops,
be one because somebody lives in a poorer definitely am grateful. I've used it a few times, and I
mhm.
like seeing people using it and being respectful with the cabinet. I mean, it's out front here in front of my place, and I think it's definitely a good thing, and it's been helpful because some people can't make the food banks. They can't drive to where the food banks are, and or to the churches and stuff, and it makes it difficult.
Mhm.
So this definitely helps. And I think it's really good. But like I said, I don't feel that people understand that, the number, how many people right now are there with this, because I don't think people fully understand the amount of time it takes and people.
Right. So that the thing is that it's anonymous. So I don't even actually myself know who is contributing. I know some of the people because I run into them or they post on the Facebook page or something. But in fact, we have no record of who's contributing, and of course we don't know who's taking either. The whole thing is totally a completely anonymous community thing. So I can tell you there's 60 cabinets, and so therefore there's 60 people that are willing to keep an eye on the cabinet, but they're not necessarily contributing. And I know people that contribute that aren't, the steward of a cabinet. So, it's impossible to tell. And I should point out that it is part of a larger
I know
mutual
in our
aid.
community.
Oop,
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
uh, I was going to say it is part of a larger mutual aid. It's under the umbrella of a larger program called Mutual Aid, which also just does other things like people post on the Facebook page. Uh, I ran out of diapers. I don't have milk for my kids, and my check doesn't come till next week. And it's always amazing to me. People get mad because not everybody. We can't help everybody, but sometimes it's just amazing to me. Like last week, a person down in the homeless camp needed an electrical inverter because he uses rechargeable batteries and things. He posted it. Somebody downtown had one extra by chance. I don't even know what it is. And I went and got it from her and gave it to him. And it's just really
Nice.
amazing how something you don't need that someone else does. I mean, sometimes it's like mattresses. It's really amazing the things that people give that, and they're not trying to get money from it. This is something I have and I don't need it. Does anybody need this? And it really, and I was telling you a little bit about mutual aid started guy that was a big anarchist. So anarchy, they believe there shouldn't be any government and everybody, no rules, and so that's a little extreme. But the idea that carried forward was people shouldn't have to depend on the government so much. We should be taking care of our community members better, and that's kind of the idea, the part of that turned into mutual aid.
Nice. No, that's good. And it did, COVID did, and I'm not, trying to be mean or anything, but people were relying more on the government for for the different stuff and the stimulus checks and everything else. And to a point you can understand why, right? I mean,
Hmm.
people were out of work. They were out of work. Their businesses closed, restaurants are closing, and we're still seeing the effects of this. Um, and it's sad. It breaks my heart because a lot of successful people are now, starting from scratch again because of this COVID, and it's hard, and we still have a lot of people who are afraid to go back to work, because of this, and so it's opened up. So, it's like it's opening up like a jar of marbles, when COVID hit, and so when you have people like yourself who are willing to do and help the community members and stuff, and like I said, not being judgmental, not being finger
Mhm.
pointing or anything, just, looking at his person. You're a person, you're a human being, and life is important. You are important. And we want to let you know that somebody does care. And when I hear that you go down to the jungle, which they call the homeless encampment down in Ithaca, that makes me happy too, because, that always gets such a bad rap from people in the
Mhm.
county. And, when you hear things like they're awful, they're mean, and you don't want to go down there and it's dangerous. And I feel that's the total opposite. If you're going to
Mhm.
go down there to harass, and in past judgment on these people, but if you go down there to help, or just to say, I just came by to say hi, how are you, do you need anything,
Mhm.
I feel that they're grateful for that. I feel they're
Mhm.
very grateful for that. And it's,
Oh,
it's a continual thing for years. I think it's heartbreaking
well, I
that
think
these
I think one thing that people don't need to understand more is that it can happen to anybody. Everybody says, "Oh, I would never, I'm making better choices. That would never happen to me." But you know what? One cancer that you can't pay the bills for, one house eviction, we could all be there. I mean, we're really just a step away from that. And I would hope somebody would treat me better than what some of the people there are. And, I've met tons of people there, and I don't see how they're different than anybody else. I've taken stuff down in the winter. I took some people to get kerosene to fill up, and I take. They all have a lot of dogs, so I take down a lot of water jugs for the dogs and stuff. And that's the way that we make things better. Being mean to people and cutting them off from society has never worked. I mean, that's just not a solution, to this problem. So, yeah, we try to do what I can. They have a cabinet there that a lot of us stock, with dog food too. I don't know of any cats down there right now, Renee. There was a guy that had a cat, but right now they're all dogs. That's okay. I can feed
they're all
dogs.
dogs on there.
Yeah,
Cats are so much easier to take care of than dogs,
this
I
is
think.
true. But not as good in the way of protection and protecting your stuff, though. If you live in a tent, the cat probably is
Yeah,
not
that's
gonna.
true. That's true. It's very true. I would like to go with you sometime. When you go
Oh, sure.
sometime, my last
Mhm,
day of work for the summer is the 23rd. So if you go down
mhm,
during the day after that, when Maya's in school, I would love to go with you and meet some of
mhm.
these people, and maybe try to give them some little bit of hope or inspiration, just, to show that
Yeah,
somebody
we
cares.
we
I'd like to go
usually
with you.
don't go down we usually don't go down in there unless there's a call and they ask for me to, because we try to protect their privacy. So, generally, there's one person that I know very well and take, groceries and things and then stock the cabinet, usually meet some people there. But in general, we try to, um, respect their privacy unless they ask for something in specific, yeah.
Nice. Maybe I could do a story on it sometime,
Yeah.
which would be kind of cool. We'll see.
Mhm.
So let's talk about GMOs, Teresa. Now, you're a scientist, and now the company that you're co-owner of, let's talk about that a little bit.
Mhm.
So
So first,
what
let
exactly
me say
is
that we don't do GMOs specifically. We are math and statistics and entirely computational. In fact, since COVID, we all work from home, so we're just totally computer based. Our clients grow all the plants and do take all the data and things like that. And what we do is try to find better statistical methods. So if you have, say you want to cross pollinate two plants, and the pollen from one, then you get the baby seeds, and they're just like 1,000 baby kids of those two parents. But suppose you have a lot of choices for those parents, and you don't know which will make the best next generation. And you do have data. You know that one is tall, but this one has better yield. This one is colorful, and you want to try to somehow get the best baby, the best kid out of those. Which two do you choose to cross pollinate? So that's a very small, simple example, but think about that on a scale of 10,000 choices, okay? So we try to come up with better math and statistical methods to help companies make those choices a little more efficiently, so that you can, in the end, come up with a better plant, maybe a crop that has better yield. Right now, because of climate change, drought tolerance is a very important thing. So it hopefully it is another way of me helping feed the world by eventually coming up with better crops and things. But we work mainly totally on the so we're all very geeky with math and statistics and computer science and stuff like that. And that's what we do at the company. So it does kind of relate in my head to food insecurity as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's good because with everything and the shortages we've been seeing with food, I mean, working in a school district and knowing how the supply is, it's awful, and the prices are through the roof. They're through. I mean, if you think the grocery store is bad, you should see what they're doing to these school districts and these larger institutions with the prices. It's really, really bad. And I look at this and I say, okay, so this also helps people a little bit with being self-sustainable, where they can grow their own food and not have to rely so much on the stores with the supply and chain because it's all messed up right now. So I think that's a really good thing with this now. Like, there's a tomato plant that I love, and I have a couple of them, and they're called patio tomatoes. That's what they call them at school, and when they do them in the greenhouse. And I have like 5 of them, and they're like really awesome because they're big, they're hardy, and they grow very well. Is that like something like that you do? Where you combine them?
Absolutely,
because I had never heard of that until like last year.
Absolutely. So now suppose those
So it's
plants are
more for growing them in.
It's more for making a new plant that maybe would be just like your favorite plant, only it grew better. It had better yield, or it was resistant to whatever worms are eating your tomatoes. So it's like it's trying to make a plant that's something that you like, but better, improved, better yield.
Right.
Like I said, with climate change now, drought tolerance, heat tolerance are things that a lot of companies are looking into, but they're very tricky things to improve, because you can imagine something easy like, you can tell a tall plant just by looking at it. And you can tell that one plant is getting eaten by worms and the other one is not. They're very obvious things. But measuring something like drought tolerance, which probably has lots of different genes affecting it, it's very complicated. So making something like that is a lot more tricky and does involve a lot of computational work, math and statistics and stuff. But we're hoping to, make your favorite tomato plant. Right now we have projects on banana, berries, soybean, wheat, things like that. But making your favorite tomato plant even better would be a project for us.
I love it. I mean, last year they all died because we had a frost, and even though they recovered, they got ruined. This year, that big frost killed all of them, except I was able to bring 5 of them back. So 5 of them are basically restarting on their own, and I lost the 6th one, but they're going, and just about everything else that I bought died. And I had them covered. I had them covered with a thick blanket, and they were doing so well. And then that last frost just went, joke's on you. But a little bit, I don't know if there we go. I'm starting, basically starting over with this, and hoping that I see some progress this year. It just might be a little bit later. But so when you do this,
So this might be a good
so that
way
people
to
understand there's no chemicals involved. There's no, you're just doing it based off of the plants and
Our
study
part,
that
the
way, right?
company, whatever our client companies do, we have no idea, and that's their secret. What we do is advise them on what's the best way to, and this is all, talking about natural cross-pollination now. what's the best way to get the next generation of plants and find one that's better, or that has both combinations from both parents and things like that. So this is just regular cross-pollination. Then suppose we found something that was a good gene that would fix your tomato plants, would make them frost tolerant, would then if our client wanted to use that to make a GMO, that's their business, and we don't have anything against that. That's fine. And that's what I think people don't understand about GMOs is that most things, if we had all the time in the world, years and years, and, we all come from this one original bacteria, microorganism. So all the DNA is the same. It's not like people act like it's taking something fake and putting it into, something natural. It's not like that. It's a mixing, but that's what we're doing all the time when we cross two tomato plants or, people make those broccoli, cauliflower things, whatever they are. We're mixing up genes and mixing up DNA the same. It's just GMO happens to be a faster way to do it. Now, do you want me to talk about the bad and the good? The good thing about
please do, because this is what people don't understand.
Yeah. So the good thing about it is that it can save a lot of time. So suppose they discovered that big drought tolerant gene, the gene that was going to make wheat drought tolerant or something. I mean, you could save a lot of lives by doing that. And I'll bet those people would not care that they were eating a GMO plant either, because there would be so much more food available, Now, the bad thing is that we don't always know everything about what genes do. We've had the whole genome, a lot of genome sequencing discovered, but we don't know, suppose that same wonderful drought tolerant gene also made them taste terrible or made them turn yellow. A lot of testing is involved to make sure that we're getting the effect we want and not other effects. And I think that's what people are somewhat worried about. But the thing that's kind of ironic to me as a plant breeder is that GMOs undergo a lot of testing in the field because they're so regulated. Whereas somebody could go cross two bizarre things, and as long as they could get the pollination to work, there's like no regulation on it. And people have been poisoned by things that were developed through regular pollination. So, in fact, GMOs go through a lot more testing than regular plant breeding things. I mean, the problem with them, one is that people think it's unnatural or that they're putting, like they're gonna. So that one example is when they wanted to put some fish DNA into the tomatoes to make them frost resistant, right? And there was a big outcry. There's animal DNA in our vegetables. I think what people don't understand is the basic biology of DNA. And I brought a little picture if I can show you. If everyone remembers from their high school biology and biology or chemistry class, this is a molecule of could be sugar. This happens to be amino acids. There's only 4 amino acids that make up all our DNA, and that's guanine. You might hear guanine, adenine, thymine, and cytosine, and that's where you get the GATC that people always see when they're talking about DNA sequences. We are all, everything, every biological organ, a fish, plants, whatever, we are made of those exact same 4 amino acids. Now, how does that make us different than a fish? That's because there's lots of them strung together on our chromosomes. And so in humans, there's 3 billion of these GACTs. And so you can imagine if you had only 4, little math reminder here. If you had only 4, the number of possible combinations of these 4 is going to be 4 times 3, 24. 4 times 3 times 2, right? That I know that's long ago math, but there would only be 24 combinations. But when you start talking about 3 billion of those, you're talking about gazillion, billion, whatever comes next, possible combinations. And that's how we are different from cats because there's so many possible different combinations of those amino acids. But it isn't like animals have something different in their DNA than we do. There isn't. It's just the difference in the orders and the number of chromosomes and things like that. It's still those same 4 amino acids. And so, I think that's very hard for people to understand. How can if I looked at a DNA sequence, people send their DNA off to get analyzed by 23andMe or whatever. If you looked at a DNA sequence and you didn't know anything else about it, you would not be able to tell if it was a plant, an animal, a human, or whatever, without some knowledge of, okay, I happen to know that the gene for diabetes looks like this, therefore this must be a person, something like that. But there's no difference at all in the DNA. Okay. There's some differences in the structures, like plant cells have cell walls around their DNA, but the DNA is still GACT, GACT, GACT. And I think that's hard for people to, maybe they like to think that humans are these unique, wonderful, special things. Sorry.
No, they do. It's true. And we're the most destructive animal on the planet.
So much for civilized, right? So I think the thing that people should be concerned about with GMOs is not that it's a GMO, but has there been enough testing to make sure that it's safe?
But
Is it something,
I mean, that's interesting. That's, didn't hear it.
Oh, there you are. You were lost for a minute.
Yeah. I didn't hear that that last part that you said about GMOs.
Oh, I was going to say the thing
concern.
to be concerned about is just to make sure that that the adequate testing, like here in the U.S., there's a lot of testing and things done. It'd be nice if they would be more transparent with what they had put in, because as a crazy example, suppose they put a peanut DNA gene into your tomato. If you're allergic to peanuts, you're going to be allergic to it. So, they're not doing things like that. I'm just saying that I think people would feel better if they knew a little more information about it. But just simply the fact that it's a GMO does not mean anything.
Right. So here's the thing, I think, and maybe they need to reclassify it. Because prior to talking to you, when I think of GMO, the thought is Monsanto and putting in all of these different things into the plants that is, causing health concerns that are banned over in the UK and around the world, but yet they're still putting it into our foods. Does that make sense to you? So maybe they need to reclassify how they...
I think they just need to be more upfront with the results. So the thing about those items that you're talking about is that they do have good things too. So what they did, for example, Roundup Ready that everyone hears about, in the plant, they found out that they could put a gene that made it so that Roundup doesn't kill it. Roundup is a weed killer. And this plant, there's a lot of Roundup Ready plants, but suppose corn, for example, Roundup won't kill it. This means that they can have a whole field of this corn. They can spray it all with herbicide and the corn will be fine, but the weeds are gone. So the great thing about that was no more weeding, no more weeds. They didn't need to go in with people to pull weeds. They didn't need to go in with mechanical things. The bigger problem was that it let them use more Roundup. It's not really the plants, the GMO plants, that were the problem. It was the result of what happened was that now they can everybody wants to use Roundup, which is a poison. So it's not really even related to the GMO exactly. So I think people just need to think deeper about
I don't think people look at it as that. Right. When they think of GMO, I don't think they look at it as, okay, so
what is it doing? What's the bad? What's the good?
A gene and to create this resistant, right? I think they're thinking.
I didn't hear that last part.
And into the food.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I said, I
So
think people are thinking more that it's put into the plant and into the food, but it's those that are still spraying it that it's getting into the food. It's not that it's genetically
it's
put
not the
into the food.
GMO. It's not the GMO that's the problem. It's the poison that they're using because they can. Now they can't. Yeah. And
Right.
I think a lot of things are going
Why,
to be
you
like that.
know,
I think we're going to have a lot of tough decisions because suppose, I mean, everything has a good and a bad side. You know, nothing is like clear. Suppose something has some great, like I said, the drought tolerance, for example. Suppose they could suddenly grow corn everywhere in Africa. I mean, you would feed the world, right? But what if
right.
it has some downside? I mean, it's going to maybe have something wrong. Maybe it kills all the other plants around it. Maybe it poisons the animals that are there, the lions. You know, it could have some. And I think there's going to be a lot of decisions that are going to need to be made, not because GMOs are bad inherently. It's that it's a technology that allows us to make something a lot faster and easier than we could if we just took pollen from one plant to another.
And how do you see the bees? How do they react to this? Are the bees
It
like
just
still the same? Are they
yeah, they wouldn't care. Well, they don't eat plants anyways. They just eat the honey, but and the pollen. Sorry, they eat the pollen to make the honey, but they wouldn't care unless, you know, there are certainly plants that have been made to kill specific kinds of bugs, not bees, but you know, the kinds of bugs that were eating the plants. They have made developed plants that when that bug eats it, they die, which again, you could see that's a great thing because we don't want those bugs eating our plants, but it's also, you know, killing bugs if you want to think about it that way. So I don't think the bees, they don't care whether it's a GMO plant or not. They care
Mhm.
what is the result. Did they make that plant have icky tasting pollen? Does it have, maybe it has better tasting pollen because it's a GMO? It's totally unrelated to the fact if it's a GMO or not. It's what is that GMO doing? So every case is going to be completely different. And I know people don't like things like that because you have to think hard about it. But every single case is going to be completely different. And we're going to have to weigh the good and the bad. Someone has a
Interesting.
question.
So so many things to consider. Hi, Colleen. She said, why aren't there restrictions on Roundup?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, pesticides and herbicides in general, I'm surprised what they get away with. But yeah, that's totally out of my field, and I don't know. And I think it's because there are good sides. Like I said, Roundup saves a lot of labor and it makes things cost a lot less because you don't need people out there weeding and things like that. So I suspect it's because there are good things about it.
Right. And what people don't understand too is like it's our own, like the FDA, they approve of so much stuff being in our food, whether it be bugs, whether it be um, Roundup, whether it be, hair, anything like that. Our FDA approves the foods to a certain, they give a percentage that's allowed within the food, where in the UK, they say no. If this has even touched Roundup, it's not allowed in our country. You either remake it
Hmm.
to where it has food in it, that's good food, or you don't sell it in our country. And I think it's a lot of the Western world.
Yeah, I'm not all that familiar with regulations and
Yes, a
things.
lot of your processed
Yeah.
different chemicals and stuff,
Hmm.
which are not for you.
Hmm.
What, Teresa, what?
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're not that familiar with it.
No,
Um,
yeah,
so okay, then I'm going to touch on something different.
regulations.
What is your favorite planting technique? Is it hydroponics? Is it really?
um, I don't think I have a
Wow.
technique so much as I think I love the options that are out there that you can choose from so many different tomatoes. I love that there are ones that I'm excited about things being drought tolerant. I keep bringing that up, but people think that climate change is this big hoo-ha thing that's not affecting thing. But if you live in Africa, the Sahara Desert is literally gaining like an inch a year. I mean, it's creeping down on people, and it's already hard to grow things there. Pretty soon they're going to have no food at all. So that's why I keep mentioning drought tolerance. If we don't do something about plants being able to survive in a hotter world, we're going to be in big trouble. So I don't plant all that much stuff because I don't have time to harvest, and I always miss the harvest and lose my lose.
Right.
um, my husband does all the flower planting. But so what more excites me is the possibility of new things to feed people.
No.
Yeah. New ways to feed people, and also healthier. So I used to work travel a lot in Africa when I was teaching, and their food choices are so limited. I mean, like
You're
in
breaking
Mali, West Africa, you eat millet. That's all there is, and it's nasty. If we could make vegetables that grew in that climate, I mean, think how much healthier people would be. So that's why I don't care whether it's GMO or they blow it out of a space module. I don't care how, that the people need to be fed.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I want to try doing hydroponics someday. I think a lot of
You know
people are
what?
starting to do
I
that
tried the
at
lettuce.
home.
I didn't like the lettuce all that much. I didn't think it had that much flavor. I imagine that now they've got much better techniques and are doing better, but I remember trying it when it first came out because the flavor comes from, the nutrients and things. Um,
Hmm.
so to me, it didn't taste natural, if you want to use that word. I'll bet they're doing a much better job at it now, and I should try it again.
They, I've had some. And it's not that bad. I've had some that tasted very bitter. But I mean, Cornell started that right down the road
Hmm.
here, on the other side of NISEC, there across from NISEC, and they had the
Hmm.
huge thing, and everybody was like, "What is that? What is that thing?" And they're like, "What? They're doing what?" And everybody was like, kind of like amazed, and it's this huge like greenhouse, everybody. That it's all you saw was like nothing at first, and then all of a sudden you saw all this greenery within like the matter of a week,
Hmm.
and and then it would get like really big, and then
And
they'd
that makes it
harvest it
possible to
and
grow
everything else. So I thought that was kind of
where
cool.
it
So
might not
hydroponics,
have.
and a lot of people are using
Yeah,
it
so
for everything, for all their different herbs and vegetables.
yeah, and it makes it possible. That's another way of getting food to people is growing it where you can't grow it in the ground, or coming up with new methods to grow it. Like, in Japan, what's popular since space is such a problem there is it's kind of stacking up things in the greenhouse. They're like on a little step thing. And so I think, all those
Yeah,
methods are great ways to try to figure out how to feed people.
yeah, they have those. They have them now here too with the tower. They're like the tower planters, and
Hmm.
you can either pour in water from the top, which my coworker was saying that she knows somebody who has it, and then she said they're growing amazing. Or they have the actual, where it's the hydroponics, where the water just circulates and you put the nutrients, you pour
Hmm.
nutrients in it, and it just circulates and just self waters, and and you don't use, I don't think you use much dirt. I think it's minimal dirt,
Right.
and the roots into the water,
Hmm.
which I think is like really cool, because at that point it kind of becomes almost limitless, right? I mean, it can take up all that space. It's not just to this little confined containers. It would, I guess it would be similar to growing in the ground that wasn't all clay or rock or
Hmm. I
anything
think
like
maybe
that,
probably
right?
water is the bigger problem with that, I imagine. The amount of water. If it's
Right.
recirculating, I'm sure it's, yeah. But I don't know much about it now.
It's really cool. And they have it now with fish where and I was looking up and I don't know the name of it. It's not hydroponics or it's a form of it, but where they have basically like this big pool with fish in it and they plant the vegetables and stuff on top of this tank and the fish circulate and eat and they do their business and whatever and it just automatically gives the nutrition and whatnot to the plants and they're doing good too, so that's something that's fairly new also.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I'll have to find want to say I sent my other coworker a video on it, which I thought was really cool. So I'll have to go and look. And he's going to come on. He does the farm to table, farm to
Oh,
school.
cool. Yeah.
So he's going to come on, and we're going to talk about that too, about how the importance of farm to school right now, especially again with the shortage of food supply, and how it's teaching the students how to be more self-sufficient and giving them hands-on with planting and preparing and of course eating what they've prepared, which is really good. But so yeah, that's another form that I saw too of how they're trying the different techniques of getting them to grow. So when you're done doing what you do with yours, then they try these different techniques to get them to
Right.
see what grows and for smaller spaces and everything like that. Now your husband does the garden.
Oh, yeah.
He does.
He does all the flowers, so many flowers here, and people always assume that it's me, but I guess in this particular thing we're gender reversed because he does fabulous flowers and lots of flowers, and I don't care. I like flowers, but I wouldn't put tons of effort into them like that. He also does herbs. He has a sunroom, so all winter we have basil and
Oh,
right now
neat.
he's got cilantro, rosemary. I forget what else. I think we had chives out there. So we have a lot of our own herbs, but it's all him, not me.
That's kind of cool though. That's really cool. I like that. I like, fresh herbs make a difference. They'd really
Mhm,
make a difference in the foods that you eat. And the flavor is sometimes really different from when it's dried,
mhm.
when you buy it in the store like that. But it's fresh. I mean, when you grow it yourself and you eat it and you share it with others or whatever, I mean, it's like the best thing. It's a good feeling. And knowing that it's fresh, I mean, that's the thing in
And
itself. I'm going
cheap,
to try to do some more things
free,
myself. What was
free
that?
too,
Yeah.
free also.
Yeah, well, that's it, right? And you can keep growing them if you have the right environment or you bring them inside.
Mhm,
Definitely very beneficial.
mhm.
Oh, they have the hydroponics for inside and the nutrients. So, I mean, with
Mm.
techniques of trying to make it so everybody has an opportunity, even if you have limited space, to be able to use, and grow your own food, it's really amazing. And some of them, you'd be surprised how much you can yield off of something so small as like the new towers that they have, where they almost remind me of like if you were to go to like Spain or Mexico and the towers and they have the little things where you put you know, um, I guess they would be like a drinking thing where they'd put their
Mm.
whiskey or booze
Mhm.
in, but they look really tall and they have the little things, the little pockets that hang out, and then the dirt's in there, and you put the little plant. But I mean, they've been showing to like really produce a lot of food, and that's like amazing. I read an article the other day where a woman used to do 1,000 square feet of gardening every year and yielded enough food for like the whole year for them, and she got tired of taking care of that much space for a garden. She's now doing all these container gardens, and she's like not even a third of what she had, and she's producing more food,
Mhm.
which is kind of
I think
amazing.
that's gonna be more and more
So
important. That and using land that's not right now, like, 'cause, like, right now, there's a lot of land that can't be used for gardening. If we could make plants that would grow on that,
Correct.
and also make plants that yielded it better in less space, like you're saying, I think those, I mean, the number of people in the world is multiplying at a very frightening rate. So, yeah, I think
Right.
all
It
those
is. It
methods
is.
together to feed them, yeah. And that's why I would ask people if they're concerned about GMOs to not jump to conclusions. Um, Look at both sides, ask about the effects, ask, what kinds of tests it went through, because there could be things coming out that could save a lot of lives. I mean, it could feed a lot of people. So I ask
Correct.
people, just don't jump to conclusions. Let's see, right now, the way the population is growing and the way the earth is getting hotter every second, if we don't come up with some way to feed everybody, we're going to be in big trouble. So let's wait and, be open to the methods and wait and see what comes out.
Right. So, like right now, I many people like aren't aware of it. We're in, I think it's a grand solar minimum, which is actually a mini ice age. So, um, that's why we're seeing like our area and down south a lot of the wetter weather, and a little bit of the cooler temperatures and stuff like that. And this is all going to affect all of our growing. You know, all of this is going to. So, I don't know. You know, thank you for what you do, and the others for testing this stuff out and coming up with new ways of planting
Hmm.
and new, stronger, more durable plants and stuff like that. Because I mean, our growing season right now is going to be shorter, and as you
Hmm.
saw, like winter was longer this year, and winter is going to continue to get longer, and so in all of the wet weather, it's all going to affect our growing time. Yes, she is. Your mother is. She's it's Lindsay said that you're bettering the world one day at a time.
That's right. Thank you, daughter.
I think that's awesome. But it's, and it's so important. You know what I mean? It's just so important. Um when when you like I don't even know how to say this. Okay, so let me just erase that until I can figure it out. Let's talk about like Africa, parts of Africa that are really um barren and dry and arid, and they have a hard time with growing food, and there is a lack of water and stuff. Do they focus a lot of time doing studies down there with the plants and genetically modifying the
Mhm.
plants to grow down there? So is it that like one of the major research areas would be like right down there?
Definitely, and the only things I'm aware of, I haven't been in a few years, and of course, there's lots of regulations there, and people are very concerned about just the idea of GMO, especially because they sell a lot of their things to Europe, and as you mentioned, Europe has been very anti-GMO, so they're afraid to use it just because of they might not be able to make sales and things. But I do know, I remember that they were having, I don't know if people know about cassava, but it's a root plant, sort of like a potato type tuber that grows very
Okay.
well in very dry, sandy soils. And they were um, putting in a virus resistance into that to make the plant live better without, I think it was a virus that was bothering it or a fungus, something like that. So I knew they were getting permissions, trying to get permission to grow some trials of GMO cassava. Um, I don't remember what else they were doing, but the people there, the reason they're concerned is not because they care about eating GMO or not. I mean, you're hungry, you're gonna eat whatever. What they're concerned about is if they
Right.
can't sell their crops to Europe. So they're trying to come up with a, you know, framework for rules and regulations that lets them try to feed the people without cutting them off from the market, the other markets.
The
So
right.
it's
The
hard.
most
Yeah.
I would think it would be because I mean, from what I can see, they're very strict. They're very
Hmm.
strict over, in the UK and Europe
Yeah. Well, they're also not
and
hungry, so
states about what what's in the food. Like so, I think we're locked up.
Yeah, I can't quite catch her.
There
My
we go.
daughter has thrown a good question out for me here, though. Are you on your company? So we focus on whatever our client tells us to focus on. So each client is different. Like, for example, we had a project on cucumbers a couple years ago, and they were interested in particular long, short, things like that. I'm trying to think if anybody has specifically asked for drought tolerance so far, and I don't remember. We currently have berries. They don't care about that because they're in Mexico. Um, Soy. I do remember some interesting, we had a cotton project for a while, and they were interested in such characteristics. One was something like hurricane resistance. So when the hurricanes come, if you remember down south, it just wipes out the cotton fields. But there are
Can you hear me?
plants that are able to stand and hold on to their little
It
cotton
does.
things.
Okay.
Um, and so we look at, to answer your question, Lindsay, I don't remember if anybody has asked for drought tolerance right now, but we can focus on whatever trait there's data for. Now we do need some kind of data, either somebody took some scores by eye or they measured yield or whatever. There has to be some sort of data for us to work with, but that's all we need.
Nice. That makes a lot of sense. So it's based on the client and the client's needs and what they do. So it could be drought. It could be in one area. It could be an excess amount of water in another area and wetter weather. So it's just basically area related and at that time for the research. And yeah, no, that's great. That makes a lot of sense.
I can give you another example of something that most people like is bananas. So what people don't realize about bananas is that they are sterile. You know, that's why there's no seeds in them, because they were grown specifically to have no seeds, because people didn't like biting into bananas with seeds. So they developed one, and it's a sterile plant, which means the way to make new bananas is the way you make new house plants. Take a little cutting.
Really?
Which means that I mean that's the way to make bananas, because you can't pollinate something that's sterile and has no flowers and has nothing. So that's how they make new banana plants, is exactly the way that you make house plants, to make little cuttings. Now you can do that on a huge scale. Of course, they're not doing it like one banana plant at a time. We're talking massive amounts. But the problem with that is, just like your house plant, when you do that, that baby plant is exactly the same as the other plant. It's a clone. There's no genetic variation at all, which means all those bananas out there are exactly the same. Now, if you remember some things like the Irish potato famine back in the 1850s,
Mm-hmm.
it was due to exactly the same problem. When plants are all genetically the same, that means if some disease comes and wipes out one, it's going to wipe out them all, because they're all exactly the same. And that's what happened with the potatoes too, because they're also clone propagated like that through um, cutting your potatoes up. So right now, the problem with bananas is that there's a new fungus around, I think more than one, black Saratoga, something like that, and it's wiping out bananas. And they can't breed a better banana like what our company usually has clients working on, because you can't breed a banana. So
Right,
they
right.
need to find different methods to come up with a new banana. But that's a trait that's like urgent right now. If we want any, hey, there's Amber. If we want any, bananas left, they're going to have to come up with um, a way to fight that fungus. And another good example is coffee. So this one also, you'll think that I'm hammering on climate change, but I'm a scientist. What can I tell you?
No, that's
Um,
okay.
but coffee needs a cooler environment to grow in. So you'll see them in Costa Rica or in countries down in Central America. They're growing up on the hills. They like
Mm-hmm.
cool. But unfortunately, as things get warmer, it's getting warmer and warmer, and the warm is sneaking up on them, and that means that they're not as happy. The coffee plants aren't as happy, and it also means that they're getting diseases that they don't get when they're up in the cool weather, because now it's hot and it's humid and they're getting other diseases. So coffee is another big thing, breeding, very important breeding objective right now because, again, because of climate change. What can I tell you?
So my question, with all these different bacterias and viruses and stuff that are coming along that are affecting the plants, how common is that? Like that these new ones are always coming out, and why? Do you know
It's not
why?
so much that they're, yeah, I can tell you why. So the reason that we're all different and the reason that we are different than that one original organism is because of mutation. So I told you about the four GATCs, and there's long, long strings of them, and that's where our chromosomes are made of.
Mm-hmm.
Mutations mean a change happened in that. And this exactly relates to, by the way, the COVID virus
Mm-hmm.
as well. A mutation happens all the time. Mutations are happening, and most of them don't matter. They're happening in you, and some of them cause cancer, and most of them do nothing because you have 3 billion base pairs. A mutation that might change a G to a C or something like that, 1 out of 3 billion is probably not going to hurt you. If it happens to be in a gene that is something that might cause cancer, it will. But those mutations are happening all the time, even in you, and even in the COVID virus. So that's what's creating new things. And those mutations create new things in good and bad ways. They create, if you've heard of Darwin's birds, where he mapped out all these birds that were similar, but he was able to figure out how one mutation might make a bird that's got a yellow beak instead,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So a mutation can cause a difference. Most of them don't, but some of them do. And the COVID virus, and keep in mind that viruses are much smaller. They don't have 3 billion. I forget what they have, a couple thousand, tens of thousand maybe. A mutation in a virus can change it into a new virus. And like I said, those mutations, every time your body, your cells are multiplying all the time, right? And they all have a copy of your DNA in each cell. Mistakes happen even when DNA is copying itself. It could just be a small mistake, and those things are happening all the time. So that's how new things like bacteria, that's how new everything happened. A new species of monkeys or whatever. I think humans, it would take a lot of mutations to make a new species. But in things like bacteria, something can happen, and suddenly there's a new COVID variant. And it may be that the most of the genome is the same, but some little mutation happened in a wrong place. So that's how everything, people don't like the word mutations because they think of mutants, but
Right.
that's how all changes are happening. It's mutations, and that's the basis of evolution, is little mutations happening.
Nice. Okay.
Did I
Makes
make that too long?
No, 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 no. That makes a lot of sense. And so yeah, I mean, just like any virus for a human, it's going to do the same for the plant.
Hmm.
It's going to come up with a new variation or
Always, always.
constantly changing.
Hmm.
Interesting. So I'm glad that we have that clarification on the GMOs, and then what I mean, because you're right. I mean, it's it's not what you're doing, but it's what is added after, or the the Roundup or whatever that's sprayed on the crops and that they're going to use, because it's probably the most effective way right now.
Yeah,
Because
and,
when
and it's not the technology, it's the result. So it's not because it's a GMO that's the
right,
that's the thing to worry about. That's just the technology of how they did it. Who cares? What's the result? Is it
right,
something that's better? Is it something that's better, but maybe something worse? And we have to think about the pros and cons, or something like that. So I would say the summary is, it's not the technology, it's what you do with it.
it's what you do with it. That makes a lot of sense. So they really should classify or reclassify they how they do that, instead of putting it all into one classification.
Yeah, I
They
just think
should
it's
really
it's
separate
really
that.
it's unfortunate it's unfortunate terminology, because all the things like the tomatoes that you grow, they have been genetically modified because people bred them. Tomatoes in the wild do not look like that. They're not, they're definitely big. They're very small and green. But people bred them together and did a lot of cross-pollination. So they purposely genetically modified them. They didn't do it using the new technologies that we have in genetic modification. So I think it's very unfortunate terminology, because people think, like, I don't know, do people actually think that watermelons look like that in nature? Because there is no way that a bird could pick that up and, cross-pollinate anything with it. None of that stuff is in nature. There are no big red juicy tomatoes, none of that stuff. All that stuff has been genetically modified by us, by people. That's why there's corn on the cob. So I think it's very unfortunate terminology, and I think unfortunately it's probably too late to change. But I think people should be clear that everything you're eating has been. This is not, unless you're eating way stuff that hasn't been domesticated and hasn't been bred for the market. The stuff you're eating has been genetically modified one way or the other. So it's not the how we should worry about, it's what the result was.
What the result is. And I know you focus on plants, but like when you talk about like the chickens and the cows and how they put in the growth hormones to make them grow quicker, that's really, that wouldn't be considered a genetically modified, right? Because that's
No.
chemically induced. That's
exactly correct.
So maybe they need to reclassify it as chemically induced food or chemically modified.
You know what? Some of it's not necessarily chemical code, because they have a technology that, and it sounds really space-like, but they have a technology called a gene gun, which is one of the first ways that they made GMOs, was take a piece of DNA and literally shoot it into the chromosome of another plant. So they can do it without chemicals. So it's not, I would say, I don't know what a good name is. It's just faster, really, is all that it is. It's faster.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Colleen said, interesting and good information. And she said, apples big time.
Apples big time. What's that mean?
I think she's talking about the different breeds of apples.
Oh, yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
And how they're all different and how they've changed over the years.
And they have so many amazing different varieties now. Yeah.
And what I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed, but like, let's take a look at apples, for example. They're smaller. Have you noticed that in the last couple of years that they're smaller? They're not as big as they were?
No. Mm-mm. I know some things they're making smaller on purpose, like watermelons. It turns out, they kept trying to make watermelons bigger and bigger and bigger. And turns out that's too big now. People don't have a family of 10 kids or whatever. So now they're making your own personal size. And maybe that's the reason for apples too. I have no idea. I did not notice that.
Yeah, I've been noticing that a lot lately, like in the last year or two, that they've gotten smaller.
That would be good for me, because I personally don't like them. So if I had to eat one, I'd rather eat a smaller
Oh,
one.
really? You don't like apples? Oh, yeah, I love apples. I love apples. But okay, so now I'm disturbed.
Oh no, what?
I'm not going to say how. I'm not going to say which way, but tomatoes, like, they grow. I mean, I didn't realize that they grew in the wild and they're green and small. Like, I guess I never would have thought of that.
Now I'm freaking out. Tomatoes are naturally from South America and countries like Peru, and they grow in the hills and stuff. And they have to, in nature, plants have to be small, because they get pollinated by birds being able to carry them and pooping out the seeds and carrying their seeds around and stuff. And you can imagine that a bird, those big, quote unquote heirloom tomatoes that people think are so natural, no bird would be able to carry that anywhere. And it would plop off the ground, and the seeds would grow right there, and it would become a completely inbred plant, which would not be pretty. So people think those are so natural, but in nature, things have to be small so that they can be cross-pollinated. I mean, and so my master's is actually on wild species of tomato, so don't get me started, but they're green, they taste bad, but they also have some great qualities like insect resistances, salt tolerance because they're growing up on the ocean. So they have a lot of things and that we want. So that's why people started cross-pollinating them, because they said, well, this tomato would be great if it had the taste of this tomato, but the sturdiness of this tomato. So you cross-pollinate those and you hope that one of the kids is a great tomato that has both of those qualities. I mean, that's what happened. And then people started wanting them bigger and bigger. And then, you know, when we started getting factories that were canning tomatoes, there's actually a shape of a tomato that's very blocky that companies love because they can fit it in the cans and make, you know, diced tomatoes and canned tomatoes. So
Really?
if you're at some of those companies like Heinz, they don't want round tomatoes because they don't fit in cans unless you're going to make ketchup with it. They actually prefer a much blockier shape of tomato. So none of that stuff is natural. You know, if you want to talk about what's growing out in nature,
No.
people have done that.
So you've actually tasted a tomato from the wild, like from Peru and stuff? Have you
Oh,
actually?
you can't, they're poisonous, so no, I'm not
They
going
are
to eat it.
poison. Really?
Yeah.
Holy cow. Imagine that. Like, so from a poisonous small green plant that grew in the wild, we have tomatoes that we eat today.
hmm Lots
Wow.
of cross-pollinating, no GMOs involved, but look what I mean, you have to call that genetically modified because it's a big difference that they made. And
Correct.
corn is another example. The ancestor of corn is this little thing that has maybe like 5 or 6, it's called teosinte. It's like 5 or 6 kernels of corn on it. People, you know, maybe there was a mutation. There was one that had like 10. Somebody said, oh, woohoo, this is better. I'm going to take this one to plant seeds from the next time. And over time, it got to be the corn that we see today. And, you know, people were doing that even when they didn't know what they were doing. Hunter gatherers, you know, Native Americans, they saw something that, you know, you have a whole field of corn. One of them is better than the other, and that's just because it had a mutation or two. They're going to pick that one and intuitively think, this is the one, this is the good one. I'm going to plant this one for my next season because you know that the children of that are going to be better than obviously the small ones. Over generations and generations, that's how we got corn on the. I mean, there's no sweet corn in nature either. You know,
Right, right.
it does not exist. So
Interesting. So now it brings a question to my mind. And you might think it's silly, but like the Native Americans, like way back, before all of this, I mean, what was the corn actually like? I mean, I know they've got what they call the Indian corn, but what was it
mhm.
like? Was it actually smaller? And
Much smaller. Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know. Don't recall exactly when they started getting more than one row of it. It didn't even have more than one row, the original, the ancestor of corn. And so, yeah, that took a long time, you know, generations and generations to get to where we are today. Yeah.
wow, wow. So now, what is it about? And maybe you don't know because it doesn't have anything to do with you. But what is it about corn and soy that everybody has this thing about? Is
Well,
it
I think the main thing that they're flipping out about is suddenly people found out that it's actually too late for you to worry about eating GMO stuff because before there were regulations and stuff, they were already doing it. And like, I forget the exact number, but something like 70% of the corn in the US is already GMO, and the same with soy. And so I think what people are flipping out about is that my voice is about to go, is that it happened without them knowing, and it's sort of too late to go back.
gotcha? Okay. So you okay?
Not used to talking.
It's all right. So I mean, this is all interesting information for those of you who are watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Type it right in the chat room there, and we'll be able to see it, and she can answer it for you. Because and this really does blow my mind um in regard to this information, because I mean, I always thought GMO was bad,
Bad,
right?
bad, bad.
You don't think
Yeah.
about it, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And you know, I laughed because one of my best friends, she was doing an event one day, and she makes natural soaps and everything. She's, GMO free and all that. And this woman was eating popcorn and came up to her, and she was spitting out popcorn as she was talking, and she's like, "What's a GMO?" And she,
Oopsie.
and so we laugh about that all the time. What's a GMO? And yeah,
Education, education, education.
exactly. She was spitting her popcorn, chewed popcorn out as she was saying it. But um, I mean, and that's it. Education is so important, and that's why you're here. That's why I
Mhm.
have you on tonight, is to help people to understand a little bit better, and that the importance of reading the labels on your food, because then you're going to know. And I've noticed that they have actually started, and I don't know how now to take this, because recently on the packages you're going to start seeing where they have on their genetically modified ingredients in this product.
Mhm.
So they're kind of like, okay, so pretty much everything is genetically modified. We've deciphered that already, and it's a continual thing. So are they saying that, or are they saying it's what's done? And as far as the Roundup, what are they meaning by GMO
I think
when
the
they put it on the
meaning
labels?
they're using it in they've been made with technology is what it means. So they're some ingredients, and if they don't say what, I haven't seen those labels. To be honest, I don't pay attention to GMO labels because I don't care whether
Right,
it's GMO. I want to eat something that's healthy.
right.
But
Well, and that's
I
the
think,
difference. You want to eat something that's healthy compared to, I mean, a lot of people buy a lot of your frozen stuff and your processed foods.
yeah,
So
I
that's
personally would much rather eat a GMO than highly processed stuff, which is killing
exactly
people. But so I haven't seen those labels, but I'm sure what they mean is some ingredient in there was made using one of the new technologies, not just uh, cross pollinating.
okay. Yeah, that's what I was
But
kind of.
I don't see how that helps you personally. But I guess people are worried and they want to know. But I just don't see how that information even helps you make a decision about what you're eating or not. You don't know what they did. You don't know which ingredient.
Right, exactly. You would want to, I mean, I would think that they would, well, they're not going to come out and say it, but the products I've seen it on and people have posted on it are products that are banned in the UK.
Hmm.
So that's interesting. And when my friends came over from England, and I met them for the first time, and I mean, you and I laugh. I still laugh to this day. And I said, "Boy, they make you guys small over there," and and they are. I mean, they're
Yeah.
they're all more
Not
petite,
obese.
smaller, and they're not. Yes, no, they're not. They're
Mhm.
not. And they said this is how we all are over there. So they're, you know, maybe we over here in America have been genetically modified as far as our
Or
sizes
we eat too
like
big
that
a
too.
plateful. I mean, have you seen serving sizes in France? People would scream if you went to a restaurant because they are like
Right.
this big. I mean, it's totally portion sizes.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
totally. But they also but they're height wise and stuff too. There's a smaller build
I
even
don't
than we
know if
are
I
over here.
believe that, but
I've I don't know. I kind of saw it a little bit,
I'm
but
gonna look it up later.
I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty interesting. It was really
Mhm.
interesting, but yeah, I mean, definitely, there was a difference. I mean, you could see it, and of course, in France, you talk about France, and native native person of France, who's there and stuff, and they're much more fit looking. They're not as obese as
Mhm.
we are over here in the U.S. Some of us. But and a lot of that too has to do with genetics and stuff too. You know,
I think so, but I think the portion size and how much we eat here, people that have come to visit me have just been shocked. Like we used to have an African scientist program and bring scientists over from Africa for 6 months. And I just remember the first time we went, to a restaurant, and one of them in particular just got a salad, and he looked at it and he said, "Do I have to eat this whole thing?" I mean, it was just he'd never seen such a huge. I mean, we eat. Why? I don't know. But if you go to France or England, they eat. The reason they're not fat is because they're eating things. Instead of a 16-ounce steak, they're eating a 4-ounce, a regular portion of steak.
Right,
Or
right.
chicken, and they eat good stuff, cream, cheesy and wine and cream and stuff. But you never see a serving in a restaurant where they plop down this huge steak in front of you. Never.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't. No, I've noticed that. We eat big here.
Yeah.
We do. We eat big. Our portion sizes are bigger. Like when you take a look like at a school, right? So, well, here's a perfect example. Okay, we're only allowed to give so much protein per serving per kid.
Mm.
And you look at that and you go, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" That's not our rule. That's not us saying starve. We are told by the government how much we're allowed to serve these kids.
Mhm.
And so to look at it, you might think, oh my God, that's like awful. But that's what they want. If they say 4 ounces or 2 ounces, that's what you're getting. 3 ounces,
Mhm.
it has to be 3 ounces because at any time they could come in and they could look at us and say, that's over serving. You're
Mhm.
serving them too much or, so on and
Yeah.
so forth. And
Well, child obesity is a huge problem, though. I mean, not getting enough protein is not a problem in this country. There's nobody that's not getting enough protein, not getting enough greens, and B vitamins and vegetables and things. That's a problem, but
mhm.
it's very rare for somebody here to not get enough protein.
Yeah, it's definitely when they come up and they say they're still hungry and it breaks your heart. Um, and so like we offer several different varieties of food for the kids. And there's always the main course, but we have like 3 different kinds of sandwiches that they can choose from. We have, the bagels with cream cheese if they want. So say lunch, but it also comes with a hot vegetable,
Hmm.
and we try to season that up so they're not just the plain old. Of course, half the time it's canned, right? Sometimes we get fresh, like this time of year. We'll be having more fresh through fall, which will be nice. But the canned stuff like has no flavoring, and so we spice it up a little bit more. And you can't use salt, and you can't use sugar, and so there's all these things. But then we offer canned fruit, and we offer a lot of fresh
Hmm.
fruit, and we offer different types of salads. So spinach salad, regular salad, and we put them in the boats that are about like this. They're pretty good.
Hmm.
um
Hmm.
and so, and we tell the kids, take the food, take every component that you can, so that you're not hungry later. And the problem is that the kids say, look, this is all I got for lunch, and they'll take a picture. And you see this not at our school, but other schools, you'll see where the parents said, this is all they served my kid for lunch. No, that's what your child
Chose, right? Yeah.
chose to take. So, there's this big discrepancy in regard to what parents will believe and what is actually being served within to the students. And so, of course they're gonna believe their kids, but when they have all these different components, those trays are full.
Hmm.
They are full.
It's it's hard
And
to get kids to eat, especially because at home they're likely not eating very healthy because
exactly.
most people in the U.S. are not eating all that healthy. So probably they are not getting used to eating spinach salad at home, unfortunately. And
You
and
know
it's
what?
great
It's
that
actually going because we throw some cheese on it and cut up apple.
I was going to say it's great that you're introducing that to kids because that right there is the start of a much healthier
Yep.
lifestyle.
Yep. And the fresh fruit, they really like that. And you're only supposed to have one thing of cup fruit, but they can have one thing of cup fruit and they can have a fresh fruit. But the kids will look and say, well, can I have 2 pieces of pineapple? And I'm not going to tell a kid no. If you want to take,
Hmm.
an extra piece of fresh fruit, or can I have a banana and an apple over canned, I'm going to tell them, go right ahead. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
over the canned, I would prefer fresh fruit too. So I mean, it's
Mhm.
what, so that parents know it's what your child chooses to put on their tray or on their plate. It's not that they're not being offered these things, although it's been difficult, but it's still doable of getting the stuff in. You know, we like right now, a lot of things, a lot of the distributors are going to be jacking the prices up again. We were told over the
Mhm.
summer, and they're going to go up quite high. And so they cut out everything. You can't get anything right now. Well, that's okay. So I'm fabricating. You can't get 95% of the stuff that you would normally get
Mhm.
for the kids right now because they're getting ready to reprice everything in the next couple of weeks. So, you know, you're limited there. But every school, I do know, they have the farm to table. A lot of them have incorporated that. Um, they have the food banks will do things. They, a lot of them have special contracts with you know, locally grown New York State foods or foods from Tennessee or whatever state you're in. They have this stuff where it comes in, and you know, you're getting the fresh potatoes, you're getting the fresh um, fruits and vegetables and the cabbage. So you're going to see more coleslaw maybe, and you know, and there's many different ways to make coleslaw. So you know, you're going to start seeing some of that. I think we've done like 4 or 5 different varieties of coleslaw, you know, ourselves, you know, even just testing out new recipes on the kids and what ones do they like better, you know. So it's definitely an interesting and a hot topic for many people because they don't understand, you know what I mean? They don't understand what's going on and what the
Mhm.
kids are actually served. But some of the stuff I do balk at, you know, and say, okay, so now we need to do a little bit of change on this stuff because we do have growing kids, and
Mhm.
you know, and food does fuel their body and get them through the day. And so what better food are you going to be offering us to, you know, even though the stuff you make it from scratch as best you can, you know, what are they going to offer us to be able to do this for the kids and stuff, and like get rid of that wheat bread that's hard as a rock and you know, that repeats on everybody, you know, and tastes absolutely awful. And why do we have to use like the whole wheat pasta, you know, all the time? And have you tried it? I mean, the kinds that they give to the schools are just they're awful. You know, they don't taste good. You know, we served raviolis for the first time the other day, and it was made with the whole wheat pasta, and the inside it was like, okay, this is junk. The inside was almost like the pasta, the consistency of the pasta. It wasn't even like, you know, your soft ricotta or anything like that in it. You
Mhm.
know, it was just, and so it's all trial and error for everybody.
Yeah, I haven't tried
Ugh,
that.
yeah, be
I
grateful.
do know that people will not take that out of the food cabinets.
What
Whole wheat,
the
whole
wheat?
wheat,
Oh
whole wheat
no,
pasta. This is a big no-no.
yeah, no, they don't. They don't. And like the whole wheat bread is different. And like even with like the schools, and we brought it to their attention. Like we like okay, so we're very aware of what you're doing with our bread, and so they used to be a 2 pound loaf that we used to get in, and they were regular sliced. And then we started, um, probably about 4 months ago, the bread started coming in half the size of the slice, half the, you know what I mean, the
Mhm.
thickness, and almost shaved. And I'm like, what? So we were getting the same amount of slices out of it, but the bread was much thinner. And so I looked at the weight, it went down half a pound. So they're selling us now half a pound less of bread per loaf, or you know what I mean, half of a pound less
Mhm.
um, for the bread. And they're slicing it almost paper thin, and they're charging the same price or more for it. And it's that whole wheat stuff, which is, you know, the kids really don't care for anyway. But I mean, are you serious? You know, I mean, but this is what the companies are starting to do now. They're starting cut back. So you need to like really pay attention to your packaging and stuff. So like I said, it's you know, it's scary out there right now what they're doing. So I don't know. But is there anything else? Are there any more questions or anything anybody has for Theresa? Type it in the chat room. We'll give it another couple of minutes. And is there anything else that you wanted to add, Theresa?
No, I think I got in what I wanted to say. Yeah, just have an open mind, I guess.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I agree. And like I said, I'm glad you came on and that clarification, definitely. I think, like I said, there's a lot of confusion over, what genetically modified actually means. When you think of genetics and you think of it's biology, it's, not so much the chemistry part. Well, kind of the chemistry part in a way, maybe, but.
Well, no one remembers their high school biology and chemistry either. That's a problem.
Not many people remember much from school as far as history and stuff like that, but.
Colleen, exactly. Yeah. It's not the GMO is not necessarily bad. That's exactly the great take home point. And also my daughter says great job. So I think it's time for me to go to bed before I get in any trouble.
Thank you both for listening, and thank you for everybody who's listened in tonight. And Theresa, thank you for coming on, because I think you did a great job. And, like I said, it was so important to be able to, for people, I feel, to understand definitely and not get confused over, what it is. Thank you, Colleen. She said, thank you both.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Colleen. And you can always ask me any questions that pop up into your head, Renee.
I know. I do, don't I?
Yeah.
I try not to be too blunt about it, but sometimes when they pop in my head, it's just, it's just kind of there. So no, I'm grateful for you, and I appreciate that. And and if anybody has a question you want to ask her, you can contact me. But how can they contact you if they have questions and they want to ask?
Facebook Message is a fine place. I don't have my messages closed off or anything. Anybody can message me on Facebook. Yep.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, Theresa, for doing an awesome job. Everybody have an awesome weekend. We have Juneteenth off on Monday for our federal holiday. I'm looking forward to that. And the extended weekend is always nice. And Maya turns 16 tomorrow, everybody. So can you believe it? She's let everybody know. So. All right. Thank you, Theresa.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Renee. Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.